What is the future of diversity, equity, and inclusion? It's a question that I've been asked a lot, actually. I was going to say a bit, not a bit, a lot the last couple of weeks. And it's got to do with what's being played out on the world stage. I don't need to mention it. If you're watching this or listening to this or reading this, you already know what I'm talking about. That's why you press play. That's why you opened that newsletter. A lot of people have come to me asking me, Winitha, what do you think about what's going on? What do you think is the future of diversity, equity, inclusion? And before I share what I think is happening, I share the reality of what I know to be true already. And that is, nobody can erase the experiences of those that live with have lived experience of discrimination and marginalization. Nobody can erase those lived experiences. The other thing that I know to be true is that this work will always continue. It has continued for years, for 500 years, 1,000 years. It will continue for 500 years, for 1,000 years to come. Because when people, humans, experience inequality and inequity, it's painful. And when it's painful, people speak up and they want to do something about it. So what I know to be true is that this work will continue in whatever shape or form it is. People will not back down and stop speaking about it and stop working for it. And this is another moment in history where we have to be very focused and very grounded about the facts. The other thing that I want to share is that this is not new to me. I have been sharing this with diversity, equity, inclusion practitioners for the last 3 years. And that is, we need to keep watch. There is a rumbling that is happening. And I have been sensing this rumbling, watching this rumbling for at least the last 3 years. I've seen things played out and I've taken note. And I've shared this with other diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioners that something is going on. We need to pay attention. So what is happening right now, what is being played out right now on the world stage is actually not new news to me. So what I sensed and what I have observed out there in the world is a shift in diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And I'll mention a few things. First of all, in the UK, unfortunately, a person of color. I don't know if they identify as such. I would identify them as a person of color. Worked really hard to get diversity, equity, and inclusion removed from their organization. At a government level, there are things that were happening as well. In the States, over the last couple of years, there have been different things that have been happening in each of the different states, within the US, from parents advocating and putting pressure on schools to remove education and books about Black history, through to people putting in policies, legislation, or laws around bathrooms and around, gender discrimination. There are a lot of things, that have been going on. And it's happened at a very local level in schools and in communities, and it's happened at a more political level in terms of the different laws and legislations and regulations or acts and things like that that the different states have brought in or sort of wanted to put in place and advocated for. So there's a rumbling that has been happening, and there have been people from affirmative action through to last year the Fearless Fund got taken to the Supreme Court because they were funding Black women owned and led businesses, right? Like, what we know from Project Diane is that Black women receive like not even 1% of institutional funding or investor funding. And here these people were right? Because once they take something to the Supreme Court, it sets a precedent. So there has been a rumbling. There has been things that have been going on under the surface. And so these things are not new things to me. I hoped and prayed that a certain person wouldn't get elected. And unfortunately, the vote is in the people. But here's the other thing that I know to be true as well, is that people put people into power. People keep people in power, and people can also take people out of power. And in the States, there is a constitution, and in other countries around the world, there are certain laws that govern what someone in that position of power can and can't do. And that's what we've got to absolutely rely on when it comes to removing people and taking people outside of power. I know this to be true. In a previous organization, I was sexually discriminated against. The other women in the organization experienced it too. Other people in the organization experienced it as well. People in the industry experienced it as well. And I decided that I knew, not decided, I knew that I had two choices, which is I could leave or I could stay and fight. And the decision that I made was to stay and fight. And it's quite unnatural for a general manager to remove a CEO of a company. And that's exactly what I did. I worked really, really hard with the board to get that person removed. And it was really unfortunate because the chair before the current chair, when we asked her to write a document, a statement to share everything that she knew about him, she wrote freaking pages. So she knew what was going on. This is a mother to young daughters, a mother to young children, and is a mother that did not speak up for the sexual discrimination that was happening to women that was going on around her in the organization that she was responsible for governing. She was letting that play out, and then she chose to leave. And so it felt very, very unnatural. And I had gotten external advice, that the process to remove a CEO from an organization generally takes about 2 years. I was like, I ain't got 2 years, right? This needs to happen now. And my mantra for my life has always been, where there's a will, there is a way. I've just got to find a way. And so I found a way. And then I coached and worked with the board to make that way happen. And unfortunately, it came at a cost. It came a cost to me burning out because not only was I doing his job, I was doing my job. I was doing two other full-time employees' jobs. The company, he had run the company into the ground financially. I was trying to get the company back on track financially, which I did successfully. And I did all of that within a 6-month time frame from the time that I put in a formal complaint to the board, and then had found out 3 months later that they had done nothing with it, to then him being fired basically. Well, actually, he was paid out and told to leave. So what I know is that people can take people out of power, right? And the other thing that I know to be true is that we can also choose not to give people our power. There is a fantastic piece written by Ezra Klein. It's available on LinkedIn. It's available on YouTube if you want to access it. It was only produced a couple of days ago, and it's an incredible thought piece by Ezra Klein as to what the realities of what is actually going on. And the truth is that people try and use fear as a power tactic. When it comes to leadership, people use fear as a tactic to gain power. And now I absolutely understand and acknowledge the pain that marginalized folk are feeling and experiencing right now. It is true and it is real, and it is absolutely, absolutely, completely painful. And we cannot afford to give into our fear. We cannot. And unfortunately, that has been the reality for marginalized folk for hundreds and hundreds of years. We talk about power and privilege, we haven't had the privilege of sitting with our fear because our very lives have been at risk emotionally, mentally, physically, psychologically, and spiritually as well. So we cannot give our power over to those because that is exactly the card that they are playing right now to dominate and they're utilizing fear and chaos as a tactic to leverage the power that they have and to really play that power card so that they control everything and sounds like and looks like everyone. So now is definitely not the time to react. I absolutely know that we do need to talk about it and we do need to share the realities of what's going on. And there are certain people and places that we can do that, safe spaces that we can do that. Absolutely, we need to share the reality of what's going on in social media and at what cost. If it's going to come at a cost of you being re-traumatized, I'm not sure that is the wisest thing in my experience as an inclusion practitioner, an expert, and as a person that has lived experience of marginalization myself. We need to be very cautious about what we share. So I would share the facts, but in terms of how I'm feeling, I would share that only with people that I trust and respect, that know how to hold that space, that can bring healing into that space as well. So we absolutely must challenge and rewrite the rules of leadership in our organizations as well. So when we look at what's playing out at the world stage, do not be, got what the word is called. Do not be sort of numb's not even the right word, but sort of like numb to seeing that sort of power dynamic play out in organizations. As someone who's worked with leadership teams time and time again, as someone that has worked in corporate organizations, I have seen this power dynamic play out, let me tell you. And that is the dynamic of fear and chaos. It is a command, in leadership styles, we would call it a command and control leadership style. This is what I say needs to be done. This is what needs to be done. And often when people react out of fear or when people want to assert their power, they throw fear and they throw chaos. And that in an organization, corporate organization setting, that can look like a lot of decisions made all at once. So we need, in order to challenge the leadership status quo at a political level, we need to start at a grassroots level. We need to look at the power dynamics within ourselves. You know, how are we leading ourselves? What are the power dynamics within ourselves? How are we impacting and influencing people around us? We need to be challenging leadership done at a community level, leadership done at a team level, and leadership done at an organizational level. What we don't need in this world is more command and control, autocratic, authoritative leadership styles. What we need is more leadership styles that are based on empathy. And that brings me to the future of diversity, equity, inclusion. It is absolutely grounded in empathy. And that rumble has actually been happening for a couple of years as well. I think now a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioners, because of our jobs and our careers, are being more forthright about having that conversation. However, in terms of the corporate landscape, I have definitely been feeling that rumble, that sense of that this work is evolving to one that is more around empathy. So whatever label people want to put on it, this work has absolutely got to start with empathy. People do not have empathy, then they are not going to be advocates, they're not going to be allies, they're not going to be people that are going to stand for inclusion, equity, and diversity and justice. The heart, and this is the last thing that I want to end this session with. This work, even though it has the acronym of diversity, equity, inclusion, we know in Australia, what the work was called before was equal opportunity or equal employment. So whatever terminology we use or whatever that it might progress to, I know that belonging has been used, JEDI, so justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. It's another acronym that other people and practitioners have been utilizing. whatever terminology or terms or labels we want to put on the work, the heart of the work does not change because the heart of this work is all about human rights and social justice. And that is exactly what's at risk here in terms of the world stage. And if we allow the world stage to creep and impact on Australia, and we allow the world stage to creep and impact in our how we lead in our organizations, if we allow those in our organizations to lead how those on a world stage are leading, what is going to be the state of human rights and social justice? Because history has showed us that things actually start backtracking rather than moving forward. So now is not the time to back down. Now is not the time to keep quiet. Now is not the time, right? Now's not the time to keep quiet, but now's also not the time to just splatter words on the internet. We have to be very careful with our words because a lot of marginalized folk are feeling very burdened, very overwhelmed, in a lot of pain. And so when we're choosing words or choosing to share things, we need to take that into account. Now, look, I'm not perfect. I get it wrong. Maybe I've got it wrong in this session here. And we've got to try our best to be very conscious about the words that we choose. So guiding principle is, and it's not my words, it's someone else's words, that we need to lead with our scars and not with our wounds. So if you're feeling hurt and pain, probably now is not a good time to speak up and speak out. If you have a strength of healing in your spirit, in your soul, in your body, in your essence, then now might be the time to speak up and out. But whatever words you use, I want to encourage you to use words that move and mobilize people into action. So what action am I taking? Well, I'm sticking with inclusion. I am leading in terms of the work that I do. I'm leading with women's sponsorship programs to challenge even how we as women lead and to change leadership from the inside out in terms of organizations. It's not just the women's sponsorship program isn't just a leadership program for women. It's for people that identify as men as well in organizations. So it's two leadership programs running in parallel to each other to do the work of challenging how leadership is done within the organization as well. This year, I'll be speaking on stages all around Australia, maybe all around the world as well. And I will be sharing how we can rethink how we do leadership and sharing practical actions of how we can lead more with empathy and less with a command and control attitude. Now, people will say to me, I don't lead with command and control. I'm very consultative. I'm very collaborative. I partner with my people. I listen to my people and my teams. And in my time working with organizations, actually, I haven't seen that. There are very subtle ways that we can abuse our power in leadership. And I know that from experience, having been in leadership positions myself, being in a position of power myself and working with leadership teams and working with organizations, I have to keep my power, my ego, my pride often in check as well. And I have different people that I can use as a sounding board and bounce things off from to do a bit of a head check and a soul check on that as well. So I'll be speaking on different stages all around the world, hopefully, and definitely all around Australia, and speaking through mechanisms like whatever you're listening or watching or hearing right now, to really challenge how we rethink leadership and really changing leadership from the inside out. The change has got to happen from within here first. So that's me. That's all what I wanted to share today. Take what serves you, check out the rest. Is something that I said irritated you and gave you what I call ants in the pants, then I encourage you to sit with that agitation, sit with that discomfort, because your inner knowing, your intuition is trying to tell you something. And it may not necessarily be that Winifred is a really shitty person and that she said something that I'm really annoyed with and that I dislike. I generally find that there is something there is a learning there for us. So I encourage you to sit with that discomfort and and see what comes out of it. Really, really see what comes out of it. So now is not the time to sit in fear and to let this chaos be a distraction from the fundamental work of social justice and human rights. This is what this work is about. This work will continue. Keep advocating for it, keep taking action, and remember, always speak and act from your scars and not from your wounds. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, a wonderful day, a wonderful evening, a wonderful whatever you are experiencing right now. And from me to you, I want to send you my love, my encouragement, my big squeezy hugs, and my admiration as well for who you are in the world and everything that you've gone through and everything you will continue to stand for from here on in. Much love to you.